Well, thanks for those that could join. We appreciate it. I'll make a quick couple comments and do some intros. So this is the first in the series of three that we'll be doing on lessons learned. My name is Todd Bramblett. Joining me in the other pane that you see on the screen is Paul Farrell. I'm gonna do a little bit better of an intro, but in those three, this first part of three, we're going to talk about who, what, why, how, where, when, about offshoring, global sourcing, etc. And today we're going to start with simply the first two. Why would you do it, and when does it apply? And I'll be asking Paul quite a number of questions, and I'm sure he'll be giving me plenty of trouble because we've known each other for years. So again, my name is Todd Bramblett. I'm the managing partner, one of the three for AscentCore Technology. Um, Paul and I have known each other since about the middle of 2000 when he became a client of mine when I was in a very similar business, and we became friends over the years. So, right today, Paul and I have both been fortunate enough to have a few exits, the last of which allows us both to be in the angel investor community. So, we're angel investors, but still working pretty actively. And certainly, I'm actively involved with AscentCore. So, Paul, rather than me trying to do your intro, do you mind giving us a few points?
Sure. By the grace of God, started programming when I was in college and continued on to eventually run software firms, turn them around. Been very blessed to have been able to do that 2 or 3 times. My career also includes a stint at AOL at a great time when the internet was exploding and we were there leading. So I feel very fortunate. Client of Todd's and of course some of the other guys here since 2005, Todd. So over 15 years with 3 or 4 different firms along the way. So I'm very versed in AscentCore and what it does.
Great. So, we're
My,
going to
my,
talk.
last, my last comment is I did all the hard work because I lost my hair and Todd still has his, but that's a whole other story.
Well, I knew this. I knew this would start eventually, so I'm glad you kicked it off. So yes, Paul and I worked together and did become friends over the years. I worked for him in the last stint we were in, but we've worked hard to make sure that we make this time together as high an ROI as we possibly can for you. So we're going to give lessons learned, both as both the things that we did well, things that we learned that worked, and things that maybe didn't work so well. So I won't go through the three series, the various aspects, but I do want to cover what we are going to cover today, which will be why why would a person want to do any kind of global sourcing of the team members for software product development? Under why, what are the top benefits that we see? The top one would, I mean, typically the number one would be return on investment. Number two would be global access to talent because talent is hard to get anywhere. If you can, people, companies, software companies are moving to wherever they can get it, they will go. And then I'm going to ask Paul some other benefits that he saw. The second point under why is maximizing the benefits. If the benefits are real, how do you get them and how do you make sure you get them and not invest your time and energy and really miss the mark on those benefits? Second component then of this time together will be, well, when would I do it? Let's say I agree on why. I understand why we would do it, but when would I do it? Am I at the right stage to do it, etc. So with that backdrop, Paul, I'll come back to these and I'll turn these questions over to you. So first, why would a company want to consider doing any kind of global outsourcing? What would the top benefits be? Well, we see return on investment. The dollars spent for the development pace, speed, the velocity is pretty hard to beat. That's certainly one. Even if I can afford all US developers, I can't find them fast enough. So access to more talent's a big deal. Are those two that you saw, Paul, when you chose the last few times? And
Well,
if
I would
so,
say,
great. Explain what you think. What other benefits?
okay, well, first of all, the ROI jumps off the page. But if it wasn't for the ROI, it's the second point you made, which is accessing the pool of global talent. The last firm we sold was in cybersecurity. And even if you could find them and pay them in the United States, you 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 still need more. You have more FTE positions open in development, searching for great talent than you have people locally to fill them with. And so those are two great points, and they kind of jump off the page. But a couple other great points I'd like to kind of put in here are I like diverse teams. Some of my best performing teams are diverse. And so not only will you get your perspective from, if you do a mix of onshore and offshore, you get your U.S. perspective, but you'll also get the perspective from the AscentCore team that looks at problems a little differently, solves them a little differently. One of my best performing teams of all time was the most diverse team, and I had that at AOL. 7 people from different continents and perspectives. And that makes a big difference when you're brainstorming, especially when you have challenging situations. The next point, too, is time frame. Generally, AscentCore folks were 6 hours ahead of us. And so they could get up, get working, and then we could work together. And so now you're at around the clock with your problems. It helps definitely in support, definitely in release and things like that. But it's something that everybody has to consider. You have customers that need support from a worldwide basis. So I've always had customers in Asia and in Europe. And this also gave us a way to have support for them locally in those time zones. So those are the first two that come to mind, Todd.
Yeah, that makes sense. One we hear, and you referenced it just now, many of our clients, although not all, are mid-sized companies that are competing with the very large ones, Microsoft or Oracle. And they follow the sun, right? Their development is happening all the time, all the way around the globe, following the sun. So when the middle to smaller size software firms try to compete, it's really tough to compete with that. The speed that they're running at is crazy fast. So I agree with your point. Being able to develop, having, in this case, Romania wake up and be working away and have their questions ready when the Americans show up. If it's done well, it can definitely add to velocity. Second, maximizing the benefits. Let's say the benefits that we've referenced are real. How can you really tap into them? For instance, we're going to get into the next time we talk together, not this time. How would you go about selecting? Should I start my own captive shop? Should I partner? Should I just send over projects? For this context, we're going to use the context you had, Paul, which is it was a partner relationship where we had a company, we worked with a partner company, we didn't necessarily own it in the first iterations. So in that case where you don't control supposedly everything, how do you maximize the benefits that you're after? What are the things that come to mind for you?
Well, first and foremost is you have to treat them like they're your employees. I mean, there shouldn't be, in your mind, when you're thinking about the people from AscentCore that you're using, you should be considering them like your employees. And so therefore you want them to feel a little bit about your culture. You want them, well, you should think about them, like we would, you celebrate birthdays together, at least you acknowledge them. You invite them to all company meetings. And then some of the things that really worked for us was, in sports, you play home and home series. So you play a game on my home field and I come to your home field. And that's the other thing that we always had once a quarter, cross-pollination, people from the States going over to Romania in this case, but also people coming from Romania to the States. And that helps a tremendous amount. it's a great investment for people, for you to do that. I think that's a very important thing to have happening. So one, treat them like they're your employees, and two, cross pollinate.
Those are great. In fact, it's funny you're saying that when we're on the provider end, that when AscentCore is coaching our clients, we actually make quite a significant amount of time in referencing those 2 points. And at the end of the day, people are people. Wherever they're located, it's nice to be remembered for your birthday. It's nice to actually feel like there is a team building, and those two are fantastic points.
Uh-huh.
Um, and in terms of the cross pollination, you were probably, I'll say you're a little bit on the leaning forward end of how much you were and you encouraged the company to travel. What do you think the right balance is of remote working and face to face in your mind?
Well, I think if we're talking here in terms of the team that was offshore, um, I would say people, first of all, now we're dealing with COVID. So it's changed since, 2 years ago. But, I would still look to have some cross pollination happening once every 3-4 months. And it's one person at a time, and you rotate. The next time you take somebody different. But sometimes that's for the core team. For the senior management team, as needed. I mean, you're going to have to go. I don't know which your product planning process is, but when you're doing major project planning, when you're up there in the front of your sprint, you're going to have to go and make sure that everybody understands product management, make sure everybody understands what's going to be done and what the goal of the sprint is and how we're going to get it done. If it's a major sprint, if it's something medium size or smaller, then yeah, you might stay back. But I think this is what I'm saying is it's hard to put a formula on it. It's as you're a CEO and you see the teams melting together and you see the results of the releases you're putting out, you'll get a better feel for it. And you'll say, okay, our rhythm is only 4 months or 5 months, or our rhythm is 2 months, or we're on such a fast-paced scale. We're going to do every 2 months as project management, and we're going to do whatever it is. And so what I'm going to say is, when I think back of the 3-4 times that we've used the AscentCore people, it's different iterations each time based upon my dev team, the product, the area you're in, cybersecurity, the demanding clients. I mean, we tended to have big demanding clients out of the box, worldwide enterprises, and we were running to keep up with them a lot of times with their suggestions and stuff. So I would say it's variable, but you should plan on doing it, and you should understand what's best for you and your team and the AscentCore team, because it's their perspective as well that counts.
Great. Okay. So you made another good point, which I didn't think about, but I will bring up now, which is can on and offshore or global software development, global sourcing of the developers, whether they're your employees or they're virtually your employees, because you promoted the idea that you should treat them like they're virtually yours, which
Yep.
we very much agree with. Can this approach work for, I'll say, simple consumer apps only, or can it work for complex enterprise solutions? Obviously, your last company and the one we were in together was a complex enterprise solution. Tell me what you think about using this global sourcing approach for various types of complexities of software apps.
I would say it works in both. If it can work in complex, it can work in non-complex. But there's also tasks you got to understand that, you hire full stack developers, and certain things and certain products are complex and certain things are not. But in my experience, we've done simple things and we've done very complex things. So it would work in both environments based upon your product development lifecycle and understanding of what you need to get done. Are you going to have a blended team doing the UI or not? And that all makes a difference.
How big of a hand? Okay, so let's just say, for the sake of argument, we're going to take the more complex. How big of a hand did AscentCore or any other iteration of offshore software developer allow you to have in picking people, and is that important or not?
I think I trusted, after a while, I trusted the management that we were using, but we definitely interviewed the people too. I mean, they would they'd get down to 2 or 3 candidates, and then we would all weigh in together. My dev team would interview those candidates, and they would together make the decision, thumbs up, thumbs down, just like you would do an employee in any organization. Everybody gets to weigh in.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I know most of these answers, so I have a slight advantage. But wouldn't you agree that once you've built a team wherever it is, in this case it was Romania for you, and that you have a tech lead or an engineering manager and a tech lead that are very, very trusted, that are like employees, you hand over a substantial amount of control and trust to them, don't you?
Obviously, they could make the decision by themselves and you could trust them, but you're going to treat them like employees. So you're at least going to spend 15, 20 minutes talking to them on the phone before they come on board, to show that it's one organization that's moving forward.
Great. Okay. So related, but another idea related to, we talked about simple apps versus complex enterprise apps. What about the stage a company is in when they think about, well, should I do this or should I not do this? Everything from early ideation and prototyping with 2 people in a garage and a dog, to monster organizations. We have a couple of very, very large organizations that are, neither of them is in the sunsetting, but it is definitely a mature product. So if we take 2 people and a dog in a garage of prototyping and ideation to version 1, version 2, version 3, etc., all the way to sunsetting, where would you say that this kind of global development approach works best, and where might you shy away from it, if any?
Well, I certainly think that it works through the prototyping phase, because I've used you guys for that since leaving. Investigating my next step from Nehemiah, and there's some plans in the go there. But anyways, prototyping is good. I mean, so you're a startup, you need a prototype out. Well, what I love about the AscentCore team is they can bring 2 or 3 people. Instead, like if you do it in the United States, you find one person, they have to do everything. But if you use the AscentCore team, they could put 2 or 3 people part-time on it and build you a prototype particularly fast, as opposed to you having to find one person that does all the skills here. So that handles the lower end of the market. And the higher end of the market, complex, definitely. If it isn't just for QA, getting a different set of eyes at QA that are taking from a different perspective. But not only in QA, we found it works in all areas of development. And, we had customers that were large global financial enterprises, large global healthcare enterprises, large global consumer packaged goods. And we were making it work for those type of clients as well.
Great. Again, on this line of where can this work best, and how do you make it works in the way that matches your own company needs? You mentioned large global financial services organizations or customers. Now, they have huge data and data privacy concerns. Can a company I already know the answer to this, but can a company become SOC 2 certified if they try to do any of their work in another country or offshore? Is that possible or not? And if so,
absolutely, how? Absolutely. We were SOC 2 compliant at Nehemiah, and we made it work and pass flying colors with both sides. You have a little bit more control that you have to put in, the code and some other stuff, but It's not difficult to do. I mean, SOC 2 is a difficult process. So everything about SOC 2 is difficult, but adding an international perspective with development teams around the world is just another hurdle that you got to jump over. I wouldn't even call it a hurdle. It's just something you got to do to get it done. And we were SOC 2 compliant. It was very, very proud of it. Or other things. I mean, you could even do it. I think you could do it even if you had to had federal contracts. And there's ways to review the code if they develop it before you bring it into your main code base and stuff like that to ensure there are no problems. That definitely check the boxes for security in terms of a federal perspective.
Great. And the last major section, we're going to leave it open for questions for people here coming up shortly. But one other consideration that I know has come up a number of times in terms of not the stage, small, medium, early stage, late stage, sunsetting, but now in terms of process and readiness. How should I think about readiness if I've maybe never done this before and I'm considering it, or have done it? It was a marginal effort as to whether it was beneficial or not. And two things particularly for readiness: the cultural, managerial readiness, mindset, as well as process. Now, you've already mentioned mindset, treat them like your employees, etc. Can this be done if you have I'll say throw it over the wall, that's them over there, they send it back. Can this be successful, or is this mindset an issue that needs to be addressed?
I think it can be successful, but you're going to get so much more out of it. You're going to have so much more ROI if you do it the right way. The one thing, though, that we just touched upon, I think I want to go back, is if you've got a broken development process in the United States, you can't outsource it and make it better. I mean, if you're broken, if your main product is buggy as it comes out, and you're hoping that if you by expanding your footprint, I mean, I think you have to look at your processes. Are you ready to do it? And you can't. It's kind of like you gotta at least have a process in mind and know what you're doing before you walk into this, because that's going to help tremendously on getting your ROI up. So whether you're doing waterfall development or you're doing sprints and you're agile, you got to have your process down. You got to know what you're doing first. I mean, I'm not saying it has to be running like a Le Mans sports car, super modified, and run around the track. No, the car's got to at least be able to go around the track, and and it's got to be able to run, and then they can help improve the process. But if it's broken terribly here, it's not going to work right over there just because you outsource it.
That seems really well said. Now, I do know we wanted to leave some time for questions. So as we're waiting, I've got another one. So it's impossible not to talk about COVID. It seems been such an issue, and now the Delta is become an issue again. So what I'll say AscentCore sees on the provider side, we've never seen degree of shortage of the best talent and a willingness for companies to go wherever is required. Since so many people are working from home, it seems to us what has happened is that people have said, well, if they're working a mile away or 10 miles away, I guess it's not much different than working a state away. And if they're working a state away, I guess they can work a country away. And one thing has led to another. And the global demand curve has accelerated at a rate we've never seen in our lifetime. So with that said, many of the clients we have already are coming to us because they actually have budget to hire in the US or pick a place that's more expensive. They actually have the budget, they just can't get the people. So very frequently they're coming to us not for juniors and mids, but for seniors because they can't get enough of them.
Yeah, I think it's I want to say yes to this as a problem, and that's why AscentCore has been successful in this field for well over a decade plus, and that's what you got to look at, because in Romania there's a shortage of talent too, right? In these Romania, India, wherever you go, there's a shortage of talent, good talent, and they're attracted to good, well-run organizations that are doing and sometimes cool things. If you happen to have a cool product, you can attract more people. If you're sunsetting a product, maybe not. But this is one of the things you got to look at. You got to talk to the people when you're making your decision. If you're making your decision, you got to evaluate. You have to evaluate the management team and their ability and the facilities locally and how they treat the people and how many clients they have. Those are all important things.
Okay, so the question here is, and this I'll throw straight to you, Paul. You can read it. How has product development changed in the last couple of years? I assume they mean with COVID. Has product development changed fundamentally? I'll let you answer that, just open-ended.
Well, I mean, it's a really good question, and I would say all society has changed, and so product development has changed over the last 2 years. I think in some cases it's quickened. We had people didn't spend time commuting, and so they were getting more done. They were using all the tools available to them better. They realized that, hey, I had to do a better job on my Jira system, my Confluence system. We need to get this documented better because people are picking it up. And that's helped to accelerate the development, in my personal opinion, accelerate the development process, because first of all, a lot more coding was going on. A lot more apps had to be developed quicker. If you had a software application that was not needed tuning to be able to work in remote environments or anything, they wanted it yesterday. And so I would say it's helped the industry leap forward in terms of efficiencies and effectiveness, because people have now realized that it's how important it is to define what you want up front in a good way, whether you use Jira, Confluence, track the bugs, do the quality assurance. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah. So how does a company, obviously I'm an investor and a managing partner at AscentCore. How does anyone, no matter what company they're working with, how would a company, let's say who's a software company in the US, working with a global provider, AscentCore or others, what are the things they should do what should they consider for assuring product quality, that it's maintained at the level they want to maintain it?
Well, listen, this is
quality and security. Let me put both quality and security, because that's actually.
Yeah, I see. That's from a question that we got from somebody in the audience. But I'm going to put it this way: quality is and security are very, very important. They are the pillars of any organization. If you put out a product and it doesn't work, or it's insecure, you're going to fail. So in my mind, these are very, very important things. I think some of the stuff we did, and I'm getting tactical with people, is along the line. I mean, every Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning, we did a meetings with the team, a development stand-up, and I was there personally as a CEO. And a lot of things that we started talking about early on is show us what you got, even if it's one half a product, 3/4 of the product. And you would see stuff immediately that maybe was misinterpreted or stuff. And then just total focus on automating the code for QA. I mean, how much can you do through automation? We did a lot through automation. You know, we were on our code, the last iterations with Nehemiah Security. We ran tons of mathematical models to make sure that we were in bounds, that our regressions analysis and stuff like that were working properly. And those are the things that are going to make the difference in terms of quality. In terms of security, well, there's standard stuff you got to do. I like 2FA or things around that. People checking in code differently. Where's your DevOps? How do they work? You don't want to constrain an organization. Nobody wants to constrain an organization. But when you start thinking about DevOps and where it is and who does what, the divisions of authority and responsibility are important, and you look that down in an organization, and you have to do what makes sense for you. So that's hopefully that helps.
That's great. Let me open the aperture back up a bit and ask you I often say our best cases, our best practices are our anti-worst practices, things that you did really badly in the past, you don't want to repeat it, and you begin to create a best practice. What would you say, either on the best practice front, the top one that comes to mind, or the worst practice that really did not go well, that had to be adjusted and kicked out potentially? Your number one best practice and your number one worst practice.
Well, I think the best practice was the cross-pollination and treating everybody like employees. The worst practice is we didn't know that out of the start of the gate, and we didn't do a good job going on when we first started. I think at one iteration we hadn't had our development process honed in yet, and there was some stumbling out of the gate, and it was due to us not being well defined on what we wanted, and just thinking that we're going to fix things by using an outsourced team.
Now, I don't want to be inflammatory with this question, so I want to ask it carefully. As you know, we've had offices in many countries, from India, Romania, Argentina, etc. Do you see anything fundamentally, any location in the globe that you fundamentally like or dislike over another based on the current trends?
Well, first of all, let's come out of the box and say we've had success. My personal experience is I've had success in India, Argentina, and in Eastern Europe. Some of the other locations, English, I prefer the English in Eastern Europe. I prefer the work ethics there. And then some of this is the ability to raise your hand when there's a problem. Culturally, I think they're a little bit more prone to do that in Eastern Europe than other locations. They're all were good locations for us. But in my experience, over the last 15 years, I've had the best experience in Eastern Europe. Other people might have different experiences. That's just me personally.
Yeah, fair enough. So any closing thoughts you and I?
No, listen, happy to talk to anybody. I'm out there on LinkedIn. You guys can find me. If you want to do a personal discussion that, just one-on-one and ask me questions that you might have about this, happy to do that. Spend some time with you to give you my perspective if you need it.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul, so much for taking some time to relay the things you've done really well, it sounds like, and not maybe so well. I won't relay the things that you didn't do so well.
Because you had nothing to do with the development process.
Yeah,
that's the financial. Our development process was great.
For those that are on, Paul was the CEO and I was the CFO, COO last time around when we worked together.
Chief cook and bottle washer.
And yeah, I did all the hard work, and he got to sit on high and think high thoughts. That's what I remember anyway.
Yeah, well, we all have our own perspective. So, hey, thanks everybody for attending today. I've enjoyed sharing my thoughts with you.
Thanks so much, Paul. Thank you all. Thanks for being here. Take care.